If Ben Roethlisberger gives a rip, does he think it's going to be a celebration when he walks back into that locker room?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm thinking very hard if I want this guy back and really sort of break up the momentum they have, because he's really hung his team out to dry. And I know these guys will say they understand things are a business move. I heard Maurice Jones-Drew talk about on the Dan Patrick Show saying that he basically gambled for $8 million. He's basically betting, if I give up $8 million and I don't have that 400 carries on my body for a third straight season, I'm going to get a chance to get $40 million guaranteed. But Eric, that brings me to a question for you now. When you see James Conner, who sort of came out of nowhere, he's not making a 15th of the money that a guy like Le'Veon Bell is going to be making, and you see the amount of success he's been able to have in this Pittsburgh system. If you're sitting there as the GM this coming spring when Le'Veon Bell is a free agent, does that kind of success that Conner has had along with Le'Veon Bell make you start to think like, okay, maybe this is more of a Pittsburgh system? And maybe our team just doesn't have that kind of system set up where it actually is going to hurt Le'Veon Bell's value for that next contract.
Yeah, it very well might. I think there's some teams that Le'Veon would be very good on. I think a Saints team would love to have a guy like Le'Veon Bell, although with Alvin Kamara there, they certainly don't need him. But there are places where Le'Veon Bell's style will play into their offense very, very well. There are other places that it won't work at all. And so I think you've got to be careful if you're Le'Veon Bell, because it's not like there's going to be 31 other teams knocking on your door trying to get you to a massive contract. There's also people who I've talked to recently, because I'm a Saquon Barkley fan, who have said, boy, the Giants really should not have taken a guy like Saquon Barkley now that you can see what's going on with Eli Manning and what's everything going on with their quarterback situation there. You just never should have taken a running back that high in the draft, because the quarterback, like a franchise quarterback, if they could have gotten Darnold or Rosen, would have been far more important. So I think that feeling around the league is pretty prominent, that a running back only has a certain level of viability. It's maxed out at some point. So Le'Veon Bell holding out for this $15 to $20 million, when you're seeing what a guy like James Conner can do at, like you said, Justin, 1/15 of a value of what Le'Veon's asking for, it's just kind of proof right there that running backs can be found all across the league for a dime a dozen if you have a guy that's really good at recruiting talent. And James Conner is working well in a system there. I don't know. I just think it's a tough spot for them to be in, because I think this is going to backfire for Le'Veon Bell. I really do.
I tend to agree with you, and that's why I started to think about this question, because if I'm a GM of a team and I'm sitting there and Le'Veon Bell's, I know, going to come in for a visit, and the demand is going to be at least $40 million guaranteed, or he's going to want to get close to that Todd Gurley guaranteed money, I'm definitely going to be having some reservations about paying that out for a guy that's had a heavy workload on him, a guy that's had some major injuries. He's have off the field issues. I don't see that he's going to get anywhere close to that unless it's a desperate team that's got a ton of cap space, that's got one of these rookie type quarterbacks where they have some extra money to spend. But I'd have a lot of pause on that, because it feels like, well, at this point, if Pittsburgh can sort of plug anybody in, is James Conner now worth $15 million a year? I think most people would say, well, no, he's not. But he's got a big enough sample size where I think it's got to make you pause as a GM to say, okay, well, if we can't replicate that, if we don't have all the weaponry that Pittsburgh does around him with a Brown and a Smith-Schuster and a line that's been together and they sort of know how to play that scheme, I think that would create some pause. Even when you look at David Johnson's contract, it maxed out at $39 million total. I think Bell's just going to struggle with the market to come out to find that, or he's just going to go to a team that's not going to be in the position that Pittsburgh is. They're not going to be challenging for Super Bowls, or they're going to be a team that's like a fringe playoff type of team where they're going to demand a ton from him and a ton of work. And it's sort of that Kawhi Leonard effect. You got a guy that's willing to sit out. Yeah, there might be a team, but did Kawhi really want to go to Toronto, one of the only teams that seemed to really want him, to make that trade for him? I think Bell's going to run into some of those type of issues. But Eric, Pittsburgh is cranking. So they're at now 5-2-1. You have the Patriots leading their division at 6-2. The Texans have ripped off 6 straight. And the Chiefs continue their hot start. So quickly here, give me your ranking now of these AFC divisional leaders.
For me, it's still the Chiefs. I know that they lost to those Patriots, but I think come playoff time, and I think more games under Mahomes' belt, I don't think they're going to lose again. I just think that they can keep up offensively. The Patriots are definitely that 1B or 2. I would say that the Houston Texans are definitely on a hot streak right now. But again, come playoff time, I've got to bounce the Steelers there at 3. So then those Texans would be at 4. But Justin, it's interesting because now that we get to week 9, we do start to see that shift in the standings that looks a lot more like what you and I were talking about in the previews when we did our over-unders. Yeah, we may not hit the over-unders correctly, but I think where our thinking was as far as who's going to win the divisions and who's going to finish second, third, and fourth, it's starting to shape up and look a lot closer to what we thought it would versus early in the season when, the Dolphins have won 3 straight. Oh, come on. We all knew that the Patriots, the Steelers, the Chiefs, and then, of course, the Texans would take care of business in their divisions.
Yeah, and I think hopefully our listeners see the way that we try to put our show together, that we try not to have overreactions. We try to talk about things in the moment, maybe try to extrapolate down the road. And we even talked about the Dolphins. Are they for real at that point? We had a lot of concerns about them and who they had played and some of the issues that they were having. And things are now starting to shake out the way that we thought. I think the Jaguars are the only team that surprised us, and they've basically surprised everybody else of how poorly they've played. I'm right there with you. I think I would probably put the Patriots at 1, even though I think the Chiefs are probably playing better. I just think the Chiefs are in a similar situation to the Rams. They've got to figure out a way to be seeded higher than the Patriots. So the way it looks like they're going to have to be the number 1 seed, because I think that's going to make a major difference in either having New England come to Arrowhead versus having Mahomes have to go back up to Foxborough, because we know how good the Patriots are in Foxborough when it comes to the playoffs, that really the Ravens seem to be the only team that could give them issues at home. So I think I'd still go with the Patriots slightly above the Chiefs, but the Chiefs offensively are just on another level right now. I agree. I'd put Pittsburgh in there at 3. Texans, I'm still not sold on. I think the Fuller injury is being downplayed, but I think for that team, it really hurts them because Fuller was just that guy that made that offense much more vertical. You saw them on Sunday in Denver doing a lot more stuff around the line of scrimmage, not those deep shots down the field. So I think that could be potentially something that would hurt them down the road. I think for all these teams, though, Eric, it's trying to find a way to be 1 or 2, because I don't think any of these teams want to play a team like the LA Chargers right now. That's going to be something I think we'll have to watch with the Chiefs and the Chargers. It certainly looks right now like the Chiefs will win that division, but I would feel very uncomfortable if I was Pittsburgh or if I was Houston and you're sitting there on Wild Card weekend and you're going to have to play the LA Chargers. I don't think it's like last year where you're going to get a Buffalo or maybe even a Tennessee, a team that's fringing on 8-8, 9-7. You're going to get a very, very good football team coming into your building that has a chance to knock you out. So I think that's going to be something to watch for, Eric, as the season goes on. All right, so let's finish up with one last topic. Let's take it back to last Thursday night, where we got the barn burner action between the 49ers and the Raiders. Always fun to watch 2 one-win teams battle it out in week 9. But Eric, got a very simple question for you to end this segment. Did the Raiders quit on Thursday night?
Oh, without a doubt, Justin. That was the most disgusting NFL product I think I've ever seen. That was actually poker night for me and the guys, and we were sitting there playing poker, Texas Hold'em, watching this charade that was happening in the background on the big screen. And we just couldn't get enough laughter out because John Gruden looked completely lost. He was making all the Chucky faces that you would expect, but his team on the field looked like they couldn't care less. They had no answer for a guy named Mullins who has an answer for Mullins? No one even knew who he was 3 days prior to that game because no one knows what he was doing 3 days prior to that game. He was practically a walk-on for the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, the most unheard of thing, he comes in there and looks like Joe Montana. It's 34-3 by the end of the night. And if you watched that game, and you know, I watched it in the background, but we were watching and thinking there's just absolutely no effort in the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball on this Raiders team. They were sitting on the bench, slouched. Some had crossed arms. Some had towels over their heads. I mean, quit is not even the right word. They looked despondent.
It was pathetic. And really, it shouldn't be that much of a shocker because the Raiders front office and coaching staff apparently have quit. So you would think there would be a trickle-down effect eventually to the players, the guys who are out there battling it out and getting hit and getting hurt and getting injured. that when your front office basically continues to peel your team away and seems like they have zero desire to win and they are tanking. We talk about with the NBA and how unattractive that is for games. And here you have a team in the NFL that's doing the exact same thing. They are absolutely tanking. They want the best picks possible for this team. They don't give a damn about Oakland or the Oakland fans. They are strictly looking for what's coming up in Vegas. And if they can save quite a bit of salary cap room in the process and pocket some money, I think that's what they're happy to do. So this Raiders team, they play the Chargers this week. I don't know what the line's going to be, but I'd be happy to take the Chargers and lay a lot of points because I think that that's going to happen. Oakland's not going to show up for these games. They see the writing on the wall that every single one of them is expendable to this team. If they're going to trade Khalil Mack and they're willing to trade Amari Cooper, and it seems like Gruden's not all that thrilled with Derek Carr, that means everybody else on that roster is expendable to this team. So I think it's only going to continue to get worse for this team, Eric, for this year and potentially next year, because they're going to have a young, cheap team on the field, I think, until they go to Vegas, and then they're going to hope those 5 draft picks pan out and they can find some stars that way. But this is an embarrassment to the league at this point because you have a team that's just actively tanking. So that's a wrap for segment 1 in our NFL talk. When we come back in segment 2, it's talk-worthy time. We'll touch on college football. Is there anyone out there capable of challenging Alabama this year for the college football national title? Then we'll take it to the NBA. Luke Walton had a meeting with Magic Johnson already, and we're not 10 games in. Will he last for this season? Also, LeBron made news on Sunday night, partying after a loss. Is that something that should be a concern? And we'll finish it up talking about the Bucks. Did we overlook them when we talked about the Eastern Conference this year? We'll talk about that and more when we come back in segment 2. We are back. It's talk-worthy time, so let's talk about the big college football matchup that took place this past Saturday night. You had number 3 LSU hosting number 1 Alabama. It did not go well for LSU. They were shut out 29-0 by Alabama. Eric, this Crimson Tide team, they look pretty damn unstoppable this year. I know you've watched college football quite a bit. You saw what Michigan did to Penn State this past weekend as well. Sorry to bring that up, but is there anyone right now in college football you feel is capable of challenging Alabama this year?
No, absolutely not. Not a chance. You look at what's going on up and down that top 10. Yeah, Michigan laid one on Penn State, but I told you last week that was going to happen. I told you Penn State was going to lose that game pretty bad, and boy, did they ever. But I also called a more than 14-point win for Alabama, and they did that. They took care of business. I knew that LSU couldn't beat Alabama even at home. Alabama is just a different animal in that NCAA football right now. There is no one that's going to beat them. Clemson may give them a scare if it comes down to those two in the national title game, and I think it probably will because Clemson's a clear-cut number 2. Notre Dame is not number 3 in the country. I don't care what anyone says. I know there's a lot of fans of the Irish, and it's going to be an unpopular thing that I'm going to say, but look at how many times they've struggled this year. They struggled late into that game this past week against Northwestern. They've struggled against Pitt. Notre Dame is getting there because it's where the pollsters would love to see them. They would love it if Notre Dame could finish out the season and qualify for those college football playoffs because that's good for college football. But they're not going to do well if they make it into those college football playoffs. Michigan, they're probably a solid number 4 right now. They definitely took care of business, like I said, against Penn State. But you get beyond that, and you're seeing problems. You saw problems for LSU. You've seen problems for Texas. You've seen problems for Oklahoma struggles sometimes. WVU struggles sometimes. I mean, they just barely won on a miracle. So you find these teams that are taking miracles to win. How are they going to beat Alabama? It's not going to happen. Alabama will win this college championship season going away.
Yeah, I'd like to disagree with you for content purposes, but I'm right there watching what they did to LSU. And look, I didn't think that there was any way LSU was going to be able to hang with them in terms of by the end of the game. And the game sort of played out like we thought it would. LSU sort of kept them in check. It really wasn't until late in the first half where Alabama got that touchdown that really started to separate that game, and then they pulled away in the second half, and that's kind of what it felt like was going to happen. LSU with the home crowd, they would slow down Alabama enough, but offensively, they just looked inept when going against that Alabama defense. I think that's why I look at this Alabama team, and I really do feel like this is the most complete team that Saban's had because, yeah, you could always depend on a Nick Saban coach team. Defensively, they would be great. Special teams, they would be great. You never really knew what you were going to get on the offensive side of the football. A lot of ground and pound, a lot of slow play, take some shots, and